It's tradition every year for a draft analyst to plant your flag for quote unquote my guys. I'm doing it with mine for 2026 here on Locked On NFL Scouting.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, typically joined by Joe Marino, but not today. Joe's off this week, but no worries. We're diving into the 2026 NFL Draft with deep dives on a bunch of big picture conversations this week on the program. Today's episode of Locked On NFL Scouting is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets. If your first bet wins, head to FanDuel.com to get started. Today on the program is my guys. You know, everybody's got the list every year. Guys that I'm a big fan of, I'll stand for. I think this guy's going to be really successful. I think they can outperform their draft projection. I'm higher than the consensus on so-and-so. Right? And I got a list of 15. Some are first-round guys. Not all of them. It's very low-hanging fruit, right? Like, I can't come up here and say, here's my top 15 players in the draft. These are my guys. One of these days, for maybe like April Fool's Day, I'll get Joe with that. I'll try to do that next year. And we'll see if Joe is privy and listens. He's on vacation this week with the family. So don't rat me out would be my ask. But we're going to start with the early guys, and then we're going to go to day two names, and then some late sleepers that I think can be really good role players in the NFL as day three draft targets that maybe I have like top 100 grades on individually that I see the potential with. But we're going to start at the top of the list. I think if you've listened to any of the programming that we've done on Locked On NFL Scouting or any of the content that I've done for Locked On Dolphins or any of the mock drafts that I've written for A to Z Sports, you're not going to be surprised to find that Olaivavega Ioane, the offensive guard from Penn State, is one of my guys in this list. He's my top-rated offensive lineman. He currently ranks, and I'm much more pro horizontal draft board than I am vertical list of 1 through 300. But Ioane is my 6th rated player in this class. So I do hold him in the utmost of esteems. The players that I have higher grades on than Olaivavega Ioane are Sonny Styles, Ruben Bain, Jeremiah Love, Caleb Downs, and Mansour Delane. That's the list, right? And a lot of the consensus on Ioane is top offensive guard, but he's in the teens, right? So for me to have him that much higher than the consensus this early on in the draft, I felt like it was appropriate to kind of mention him as one of my guys. And I recognize and I'll acknowledge that he's not the most explosive athlete for an interior blocker, but you contrast that to Spencer Fano, and it's kind of apples to oranges, right? But I see a guy with really wide edges, with really heavy hands, with really powerful punch, with a really strong anchor, that's technically really clean in pass protection. I think he was credited with 4 pressures this past year, who's athletic enough to work up on the second level or cross face on the backside of blocks. I think he's got enough athleticism to be a scheme transcendent player. I think he projects very, very cleanly to the next level. 6'4", 320, just short of 33-inch arms, right? This 320-pound guy with super heavy hands, super heavy anchor. I use a plug-and-play guard. And like it is a trope, and it's over-exaggerated, the number of draft this guy, and he plays a decade for you that exists in the NFL. But I think Ioane is one of those guys. So that's the first guy that I have on my list. The second guy that I have on my list is somebody who I think is viewed as a fringe first-round player, but I really find myself enamored with his style of play. I think he's quick twitch. I think he's physical. He's young. Brandon Cisse, the South Carolina corner. He's one of my favorite corners in this class. I know that the tackling element of Cisse's game leaves you wanting a little bit more. And I know that he kind of peaked, it felt like, before the combine from a draft stock perspective. But you're talking about a guy that's super scrappy. He's got sufficient length. He's not like, wow, this freakish. I mean, we got some dudes with like 33, 34-inch arms in this classic corner. He's not built like that. But I love the demeanor. I love the aggressiveness. I think you can clean up the tackling. I think you saw the ball production start to flip the switch this year. I think he can play off. I think he's physical enough to play press. And I think you're seeing some of the instincts develop. I saw it this year for when he's playing with vision and anticipating stuff. Is it perfect yet? No. But if you look past Mansour Delane at cornerback, I thought the Jermon McCoy tape from 24 was better than Cisse's tape, but he didn't play this past year. Like, it just creates this very difficult void for me to weigh out. Well, Cisse, if you told me that he was a first-round pick and a top 30 player in the class, and he became a successful starter and was an all-around corner, I'd totally believe it. So he's a guy for me. The consensus has him, in the 40s? And he's in my top 25 players in this class. So I'm a big fan of Brandon Cisse, and he'll be 20 on draft day, right? So there's especially a corner, there's a youth appeal here that comes into play at this position where if you're a 23, 24-year-old corner and you're coming in the league, what's that negotiation look like for your second contract? I guess it's a little difficult, a little quick. Some uncomfortable conversations about your age and when the age wall is going to show up for you at corner. So Cisse is another one for me. Eli Stowers, the tight end from Vanderbilt. I think if you put him in the tight end box, I completely understand why there's a bunch of conflict. And if you're expecting a wide tight end or a traditional F blocker type, yeah, it's going to be a square peg in a round hole for the vision. But I see the receiving profile that he has, the catch radius and body control that he has as his stature. I think about the Joker role in the Sean Payton offense. Can you replicate that? Are you comfortable with him being a big slot for you at times and allowing that ambiguity? It's like Kyle Lewis. Kyle Lewis is another name. Like, I have a early 2 on Stowers, and I have a second round grade on Kyle Lewis, graded as a safety. And both of those guys, you're talking chess pieces. They're not going to be for everybody, but if you put them in the right situation, this whole arms race that you're seeing across the league with guys that are potentially 12 personnel, 11 personnel, 13 personnel. Are you a tight end? Are you a wide receiver? And then how do we match the personnel defensively to those personnel packages? Guys like Stowers and Lewis in the right hands, I think, can really allow you to prosper. And in this golden age of the more you can do and having answers for when teams go heavy at us, you can play linebacker. And when teams go light at us, you can play in the nickel or as the big safety. Or in the case of Stowers, when we want to spread you out, remember how cool it was that Sean McVay had a wide receiver and Ben Skoranek that played fullback? Like, I think Stowers can do a lot of those things with his receiving profile. So I think if you project him as a blocker, as a receiver, and project him as a pass game threat as a tight end, that's where I get excited about what it can look like. But if you put him in the wrong offense, this is going to ask him to be a Y or be a static player. He's going to line up in the slot and he's going to run the same like X number of routes. Yeah, I don't think that's putting him in a position to be successful. He's a unique piece and needs to be treated with a unique plan. And I think that does create more variance in his outcomes. And that's why if the consensus is a little lower, I get it. He's a top 40 player for me. I think consensus has him in the 50s. Where's Kyle Lewis? I want to make sure I get Kyle to give an acknowledgement of consensus. There is in the 80s, and he's a top 50 player for me. So those are the kinds of things that as I'm trying to identify who are my guys and how do I justify them being my guys, that's how I get there. Brandon Cisse being 46th overall on the consensus board, and he's a top 25 player for me, right? And Ioane being my 6th rated player versus 16th or whatever it is on the consensus board. I can actually tell you right now. 16th. So these are some of the early names that I have. I also wanted to acknowledge Christian Miller, who's my top-rated defensive tackle. I'll talk about that a little later this week with one of my guests on the program. How's that for it? We call it a tease in the biz. We're going to go some day 2 guys, some more day 2 guys. I think you can put Eli Stowers and Kyle Lewis in that conversation. I got a bunch more, some fringe top 100 guys, some guys I have top 100 grades on that are probably going to go on day 3. We'll get into all that next. Make sure you guys stick with us. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up. Your inbox is overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. Pressure's on, and you need the right hire. This is a job for Indeed. Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for from skills, experience, and location perspective. So you're not just sitting around hoping the right candidate falls into your lap. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I'm going to talk to you all about Indeed, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching, more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of our program get $75 in sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now. Support our program by saying that you heard about Indeed on the show. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions do apply. If you need to hire, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Do also want to extend the invitation to all of you listening to Locked on NFL Scouting here on Monday, April 6th. Check out the Everydayer Club. You get ad-free episodes of the program and access to the Locked On Community Discord. You can find the link to join in the show notes. Guys that I have day 2 projections on that I would be comfortable saying are some of my guys in this class. I'll keep it in the secondary. We'll go with Jalon Kilgore first. Consensus is a fringe top 100 player. I see Kilgore as a power nickel, if you will. 6'1", 210. He's got good length. He ran a 4.4 flat. He's explosive in his jumps. You see kind of the pop when he's tackling. Now, I think he's somebody who there's fair questions about playing a lot of off in the slot. You know, if you put him up closer to the line of scrimmage, how well will he do there? I see a guy who has the right kind of demeanor to be a support player in the run. Maybe you get to some matchups and you rotate him into split field stuff and ask him to play half field coverage. But I really thought his game, I liked what he did at the Senior Bowl. And then the combine testing kind of just affirmed it for me. That was like, okay, like that's when he had his testing day and I was at the airport getting ready to fly home. And that's when I put the tape on and like reaffirmed like the amount of explosiveness that I think that he has. And it's the length and the explosiveness that I think is a great recipe for him being somebody who can do the vanilla stuff if you want him to just cover half field assignments. But then when you want to get that physical presence down in the box, I think you can do a lot of damage with a guy like Jalon Kilgore. Our next name is Keyron Crawford, the quote-unquote other Auburn rusher. Consensus is 107. So again, right there in kind of that fringe top 100 grade standpoint. Man, his tape's a lot of fun. You see some really bright pass rush flashes with him. You know, he gets in this tilted two-point stance, and he's out wide, and he's in the wide 9 alignment, and you see the burst to get up the field. You see a couple different first contact counter moves to be able to set up based on a tackle sets him, and he's got the time to process it because of how wide he lines up. But then at 6'4" and 253 pounds, you'll see him at other times, and he'll be flexed out over top of the slot, and he'll collision in the contact window, and then he'll play his own coverage underneath. And a guy that can do that has the kind of pass rush appeal that he does, and I know he's an older player, he's 23 and a half. I just thought he was somebody who, if you want to do the simulated pressure stuff and have a guy who's has some experience and some comfort playing in space, Keyron Crawford for me, I think that does not get anywhere near as much gas as he should as a pass rusher in what's frankly a good class, right? I've got 14 top 100 grades for pass rushers in this year's class. Well, 15, 16, because I got 2 linebacker edge tweeners that as I highlighted, they didn't show up. So 16. And Crawford is 12th on that list. I've got an early 3 on him. If you're a team that runs sim pressure stuff and you want to drop guys out in the flats, but you want some explosiveness and pass rush presence off the edge, this is your guy, man. I think he's a great option on day 2. Jalen Farmer, if you have followed since the Senior Bowl, you are not going to be surprised at all to hear the name Jalen Farmer. 6'4" and 7/8, 322, long arms, 34 3/4 on the arms. Consensus is yet another fringe top 100 guy, 116. I've got a late 2, early 3 on Jalen Farmer. And yeah, the foot lateral quickness is not necessarily as consistent as you would like it to be. I don't think he's super light laterally on his feet. But man, you see him explode up onto the second level when he's uncovered up on a linebacker. He can get there in a hurry. You see kind of the ace and the deuce blocks with combinations with his center and his tackle, the combo and climb. And man, he gets a lot of movement. He gets a lot of displacement in the run game. And I think he's linearly athletic enough to play the wide zone stuff. Maybe not be a star and shine in it. But then from the pass rush or the pass protection standpoint, I saw a guy who, yeah, the feet and the base can afford to be a little lighter and to be a little bit more agile and fluid. But at the same time, the wingspan is over 82 and a half inches. And the arm length is it's almost 35s. You take broad shoulders, broad chest, heavy hands, super long arms. It's a great way to mitigate some of the ability to slide in a half shade over and cover half your body with a rusher, is to have that much punch power at your disposal with those wide of edges and that broad frame. And it really helped talk me down off my concerns about, hey, I do think he's a linear athlete, and I recognize that he's a linear athlete. And in a perfect world, yeah, he's probably a gap inside zone guy that doesn't have to do a bunch of the wide zone tracks. In a perfect world. But I see a guy that could be a sufficient level starter. He's like kind of John Simpson-y for me. And Simpson was fine in Baltimore, like Simpson was fine his first year in New York with the Jets. VJ Payne is a guy I got to a little bit later. I only finalized VJ not that long ago. I think it was 2 weeks ago I finished it. Another Senior Bowl guy, 22. His consensus ranking is 138. For me, I've got a 3rd round grade on VJ Payne. He's kind of in this bucket with Bud Clark, Keontae Scott, Kamari Ramsey as 3rd round guys. So VJ, I thought, was somebody who really showcased like a desirable ability to do a little bit of everything. And it wasn't always super perfect, but he's like the Kilgore, Kyle Lewis, maybe a little bit to a guy that's more of a corner as compared to a safety, but the Keontae Scott, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, long, is almost 34-inch arms. He's got an 81-inch wingspan. He ran a 4.4 flat. And he's tall, 6'3" and a quarter, 206. So he's got like a pretty large area of influence for in the nickel and underneath. I actually think he can play pretty well in man coverage against the tight ends. You let him get hands on. I think he's a little bit looser in the hips than what Kilgore is. Now, I think Kilgore's got more like pop to him. I think Kilgore's a little bit stiffer with his pads, but also it's stiffer in his hips. But I really like the way that he kind of comes down. I like the way that he'll fly down into fits. He's really aggressive. Now, I don't think he's a guy that's going to thrive when you play him deep. I think it's kind of the same thing as Kilgore, where if you give him half field assignments, he'll be fine. But the impact that you're going to feel from him is when you're willing to put him down over top of tight ends. And again, it's that whole chess match of matching personnel and receiving threats at tight end versus can you cover and do zone and execute zone and have enough fluidity underneath to do some zone match stuff and some zone drops when teams go 11. And I see Payne as another one of those kinds of players. I'll finish with this one before we go to our second break. Keyron Crawford from Missouri. Tackle, but probably a guard at the NFL level. And this cat can play for me. I would take this kid in the third round. No questions asked. Now, he's been predominantly a right tackle. He's got over 2,000 snaps on the right side, and he's got less than 1,000 snaps on the left side. But he was really good this past year at Missouri. And he's had a couple stops at a couple different schools. He was at Wake before he was at Missouri. He's an older player, 25 years old, so a late breakout this year, really effective in the Missouri scheme. But I saw a guy that won in the run game. I saw a guy that won in pass protection. I saw a guy playing in the SEC didn't have that big of issues with pass protecting on the edge, and then you project that with the displacement that he gets in the run game with what I think he could be as a pass protector, where now he's playing inside at 6'4", 311 with sub 32.5-inch arms. This is one of those mid-round college tackle convert to guards that I think has a really nice, sturdy future ahead of him as a player. I thought the light switch came on. And you just have to acknowledge the cons of he's not a super explosive athlete. I think he's got a good anchor, but he doesn't have the broadness like we talked about Jalen Farmer, right? And the 34 3/4-inch arms. We're 2.5 inches shorter on the arms. We're 2 inches shorter on the wingspan. So like you feel shorter edges because the build is shorter. And I don't think like Farmer, I don't think he's super nimble laterally. But he's somebody for me who I feel really good about projecting the guard. And I think it's the age has allowed him to develop a little bit more, and then the light bulb comes on. But I'll give him a little bit of grace when the light bulb comes on and you're playing in the SEC as compared to, the light bulb came on and you're playing FCS. And that's no shade to FCS either, right? So the names that we've talked about thus far, Olaivavega Ioane, guard, Penn State, South Carolina corner, Brandon Cisse, Vanderbilt tight end, Eli Stowers, Georgia defensive tackle, Christian Miller, got a tease for later this week. Pitt linebacker / safety, Kyle Lewis. South Carolina safety, nickel, Jalon Kilgore. Jalen Farmer, guard, Kentucky. Auburn edge, Keyron Crawford. Kansas State safety, VJ Payne. Missouri offensive lineman, Keyron Crawford. I got one more guy that's fringe top 100 and then some day 3 guys that I really like a lot. We're going to get into that on the other side of the break. Stick with us. The NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on all the action. Here's what I like about it. You can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets. If that first bet wins, the app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. And during the playoffs, that extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. It makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That is FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. Some day 3 guys. And I'll rapid fire some of these, and then I'll see what kind of time we have left at the end. Charles Demmings, cornerback. Stephen F. Austin, big time athlete, and his consensus grade is in the 170s, 160s. 6'1", 193, 441 in the 40, 42 in the vert, 11 feet in the broad. Obviously, there's a level of competition conversation that has to happen for Charles Demmings, but I think he's somebody who, if you get a player development coach around him with the tools that he has, he certainly does not lack NFL athleticism, despite the fact that he's coming from Stephen F. Austin. Sam Roush, tight end, Stanford. I'm kind of bullish on. He's the Tremaine Edmonds of inline tight ends. And what I mean by that is this. Sam Roush gets given blocking assignments that other college coaches don't really dream of giving their college tight ends, because a lot of the tight ends you're either a converted offensive lineman or you're a glorified receiving threat in the passing game. And if you're a glorified receiving threat in the passing game, then you don't have the kind of inline work and hand in the dirt experience to execute at a high level the way that I think Sam Roush does. Now, he's not a perfect player. He lacks the kind of length that you would really like to go with a 6'6" frame and 260 set. Like, this is 6'6", 270-pound tight end. And despite of that, he's got 31-inch arms and 76-inch wingspan. He's a good enough athlete. He ran a 4.7. He's pretty explosive in his jumps. But he was somebody for me that, trying to think of who was it. Was it Sam Laporta? Also was like sub 32s. And it was like this big flag. But like Laporta, the Iowa, that whole pipeline, right? That's par for the course of we're groomed. The Iowa offense is a pipeline for outside zone blocking offenses to get players, and whether it's a day 3 offensive lineman or a skill player or a back to run behind it or whatever. Like they've done it at a high level interference for a really long time. And Laporta, despite the fact that he didn't have great length, was very good as a blocker. And I see the same thing with Roush, and the Laporta thing is enough to kind of talk me off the ledge, where I'd probably be a little bit more leery about, hey, he's a really great inline blocker, but he's got narrow shoulders and he doesn't have great length. And how well do you stay attached to defensive linemen in that realm? I think because he's got so much easy like gas for his displacement and ability to move guys, I'm higher on Roush. I've got Sam Roush. Got a 3rd round grade on him. He's like 65th on my personal board, and he's like 120 on the consensus board. So that's another guy that, like, from consensus, I find myself with my assessment. And it's been cool because, like, I was a little bit behind this year, right? Like last year I was the 33rd team, and that's all I did. I started doing college profiles and deep dive full on scouting reports the second week in November. And I wrote those and mock drafts. And that's all I did from the second week in November through the draft itself. And then obviously they discontinued their editorial, and I landed with A to Z, and my responsibilities at A to Z are a little bit more like standalone content creation as compared to just doing like the equivalent of a virtual draft guide. So I've only started now. I'm at about 240. I'm probably going to do about 30 more names in the next couple of weeks to just finalize the grades on. And obviously don't have the deep dive scouting reports written up. I've got all my notes, but it's not just like you can go to 33rd team and click on a player and boom, there's the full on scouting report. This is really the first week that I've had a chance to kind of plug in and see where the consensus sits on these players. I have a couple people that I trust that I've been able to kind of ascertain like names to know to watch, use the combine list. But like we're on the come down off of that, and I'm finally getting a chance to kind of stop and look around and orient myself versus where everybody else is at with a lot of these players. Kind of see where that separation exists. That's my favorite part of the process every year, to try to go back to a few guys and see what they saw that you didn't. Some more late round guys that are guys that just I think have a chance to earn a starting role at some point down the road. Cole Wisniewski, safety, Texas Tech. Consensus is a fringe drafted player, didn't get a combine invite, was a transfer from North Dakota State, went to Texas Tech. I thought he was one of the more consistent players on that roster. Super dynamic player? No. But I think he was super smart. I think he was super tough. He's a big safety at 6'3", 215. If you tell me he goes on to secure a starting job for somebody, I would not be the least bit surprised. Travis Burke, tackle from Memphis, has a lot of gas for 30 visits. Very, very toolsy. If you told me predictably he ends up getting drafted, this is what happens when I monologue for 31 minutes. Too much air. If you tell me he gets drafted early in the 4th round and pushes for like potential top 100, I would not be surprised. The high moments are really, really nice. They look really nice. Now, there's some rough edges that we have to smooth out. But as I watched Travis Burke, I said, there's something here in the same light of like a Demetrius Crownover, the right tackle from Texas A&M, who's another guy I've got like a fringe top 100 grade on. I've got like an early 4 on both of these guys. And they're both fringe top 100 guys for me. Just the traits are so apparent that you want to bet on it. You want to bet that you can give him an environment where he can get the best version of himself and be a consistent player. Because if you can, he's going to be a hit. And then the last name that I would leave you guys with is another tight end, big tight end guy. And Riley Nowakowski, fullback, H-back, tight end from Indiana is not who I'm going to talk about here. But Matthew Hibner from SMU, transfer from Michigan. Good speed, over 250, ran 4.57, is kind of a slasher style tight end. Kind of the consensus is a not draftable player. The consensus has him outside the top 250. Hibner for me is 110 on my board. And I don't think I'm the only one. I think I saw James Foster, who does outstanding work. Can't recommend him enough. If you aren't familiar with James Foster, check out his draft work. I think he's got him in the early day 3 window as well. So it felt good to have somebody else that like I am aware of that sees kind of the receiving profile. Now, he didn't have production before this year. He was a late breakout player this year, and he's 24 years old. And that's kind of the whole book on this year's class. You're missing kind of the underclassmen declarations to kind of fill up the top, and as a result, everybody else kind of trickles up, and these late round guys that are late breakouts that maybe are fringe draftable guys, some of them work their way up. And I think Hibner's got a great chance to be that. So that's more than a dozen names that I'd like to say are some of my guys from this year's class. Love to hear from you. Who'd I miss? Let me know. Who's the consensus too low on? Who did I not mention that you felt like should have been included? Leave your thoughts in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. Appreciate you guys as always checking out Locked On NFL Scouting. I got you covered all week this week. We got some guests coming your way. Make sure you keep it with us all week long. And I will talk to you all again soon.